Good morning, friends, and happy Monday. I hope you managed to find at least a few moments of rest over your weekend. I managed to escape to Central Oregon with a few members of our family, so it's been good to just get out and ride bikes and rest a little bit. And they're all still asleep, so I'm not going to be too loud, and I'm kind of hiding out here on a deck area. Anyway, a couple concepts I want you thinking about as you move into this next week. The first one, you're going to see a question on your second assignment, which sounds perhaps a little snarky if you don't have the context around it. So the question is, so what? And what I mean by that, and you're going to hear me saying that throughout this course, is I want you learning to ask yourself, so what, when you write something. This applies to anything. It applies to an assignment in our course. It applies to an email that you might write at work. It applies to any time that you feel the need to communicate. After you write it, I want you to sit back, ask yourself, so what? Why did I write this? What's the point? When someone sees it coming their way and I'm hoping that they will read it, why? What do I want them to get from it? You need to be able to answer the so what question in a sentence or less. And I know that's challenging sometimes because you've written the whole thing because that's the space you need to communicate what you want to say. But if you're not able to condense it down to a single sentence or less, then it's going to be difficult for your readers to understand the meaning, the overall purpose of what you're trying to say. So I want you to do that today before you even get to the assignments for our course. The next time you write something, even if it's a text, ask yourself, so what? Why did I write this? Not just to achieve the fact that I wanted to write 5 emails today. Very few of us do that. And not just because I wanted to get writing assignment 2 done. But so what? Well, because I'm trying to say to this group of people, this audience, I'm trying to impart this emotion or idea. I'm trying to help them to think about life differently in whatever way it might be. The more concisely, precisely you can answer that question, the better your writing will be every time, from an email to an assignment for another class that you're working on during your major. So play with that question a little bit, this idea of so what. Obviously, I'm trying to avoid the rising sun so it's not too sharp in my face. Next thing I want you to think about is intentionality. Intentionality with every little bit of punctuation that you use. So if you place a comma, I want you thinking about, why do I have a comma there? What rule is it accomplishing? Is it necessary? Is it helping my readers to read my writing more clearly? Then I want you thinking about your periods. Are your sentences short? Are they long? All of this is up to you. You're the writer, you're in charge. But if you're not wholly intentional about every single word you choose, every length of sentence, length of paragraph, how do you expect your readers to respond? Now, most of us don't do this when we write a first draft. If you do, it can freeze you up and make it very difficult to write because you keep thinking through every next thing that you're doing. So I don't want you doing that. But this is the kind of good thought that I want you to put into it, full intentionality when you read back through what you've written. This is the editing process, which is often the hardest work of what we do as writers. And again, everything that you're learning in this course should apply, not just to the assignments that we're working on or this idea of the arc of a story. This should apply to an email that you write at work. This should apply to an email that you write to a family member, anything that you do, okay? The third and final thing I want you thinking about this week is this idea of showing rather than telling. Have any of you heard of that from way back when? Some of us were taught this way back in grade school, and then it's something that has just come to the forefront in everything that I do, and every time I see a piece of writing that's not quite doing it, right? You know, when you read something and you're like, huh, now that's pretty forgettable. It's probably because they told you something rather than showed you. I'm going to say it again. I'm sounding very repetitive here, but this applies to everything. This applies to the social media things that you're reading. It applies to the news reports that you're reading. And it applies to every kind of writing that you will do. And what I mean by that are the level of details that you're including in order to create a picture in the reader's mind rather than just sort of this finger wagging telling them about something. So if I were to tell you the best restaurant in the world is in Bend, Oregon, and it depends on our level of relationship, whether or not you even listen to me, whether or not you ask me more details so that you know more about the restaurant, whether or not you just forget what I said and move on with life, right? So, on the other hand, if I were to not even make that statement, not even make that claim, but start by describing, whatever it might be, this ahi tuna that was just melting off the fork, or some of you don't like seafood, so let's pick something else. It might be pasta, might be a really good hamburger, really good salad, whatever your taste might be. But if I were to actually describe in detail the ingredients that I was encountering, the atmosphere, the stream that we were sitting next to, perhaps out on a deck, I'm making all of this up, whatever it might be, if I list the very specific details and then perhaps make the claim, or perhaps the claim doesn't even need to be made because the details speak for themselves. I have showed you rather than just told you. And in this current era of people blaming each other for things, people shaming each other over things, people complaining about one another, isn't it high time that we actually use details to show one another rather than just, as I said, wag our fingers and tell one another? So I want you thinking about this as you're writing your next assignment. I want you thinking about it, trying to scoot out of the sun here, as you're working on your discussion forum. What can you do that will show your readers rather than tell them? Now, this doesn't mean to avoid this idea of some kind of a purpose statement, thesis statement. In academic writing, it's going to be a thesis statement. In the descriptive paragraph that I'm asking you to write for this week, you may not necessarily have a thesis statement, but you absolutely will have a sense of purpose, a sense of audience. And when your readers finish your paragraph, they're going to know what that purpose is and who that audience was, whether or not they fit into it, and they're going to walk away persuaded by you. Now, is everything that we're writing some kind of an overt argument? Not necessarily, but everything that you write should change your readers in some way. If not, so what? Why have they read it? So how are you going to change the way that they think about the world, the way that they encounter their next experience, the way that they read the news, the way that they think about their childhood, the way that they find joy in today? It doesn't have to be this enormous political opinion. In fact, I probably would rather it weren't. But I want you thinking about how your readers will walk away changed. That's another way to encounter this so what question. It's another way to incorporate showing rather than telling. And it's also another way to think about intentionality in everything that you do. Blessings on you as you walk into this week and as you go through the readings. Please make sure you're keeping up with the readings. And blessings on you as you look to the next discussion forum. Take care.